Welcome back to the podcast. This is the 2% podcast. We are here with episode 5. We're going to introduce our guests in just a moment. But first, let's talk about just the last couple of weeks. We've had not one, but 2 hurricanes come through. So we had Helene, which was not great, didn't hit Tampa directly, but it definitely did some damage here. And then we had Milton come through.
Oh, yeah.
And it's been a whirlwind. Like usually we open up the podcast with like hilarious banter and it's really funny, but I mean, it's just been a time. So it's been a struggle. And at our church, as most of you know, we were involved in the cleanup. We had the bottom floor kind of flood. And so we had to rip out the flooring and the drywall.
Not kind of flood.
It flooded. 6 inches of standing water.
It came up through the ground.
Yeah.
It didn't come in. It came up.
It was quite an ordeal. But I'll have to say we're grateful because it could have been worse. I mean, even at the church, it could have been a lot worse in Tampa overall.
Yeah.
So we're really grateful. But it has been a time. I think our folks, you guys, you've been through it the past couple of weeks. So this is our special. I guess we'll call it our Halloween episode. Here, Emily made a nice cute little pumpkin. So yeah, by the time this comes out, it'll be well past Halloween. We'll be into like almost Thanksgiving, but that's okay.
Yeah, but I mean, it's okay for people to reminisce a little bit about the time when right after the terrible hurricanes, it felt like
relive
beautiful.
our trauma again.
Yeah, exactly.
Let's just turn this into a therapy session.
Let's just relive it, but spend more time focusing on the good weather that came afterwards.
Oh yeah, gosh, no, that was fun.
And it rained yesterday for 5 minutes. Yeah, and that was it. That's all that we've had for rain since then. So
yeah, so
not too bad.
Some good things came out of it. I'm trying to find the positive, but.
With real life stories on display, gifts and talents in every way, building up a community. Have you had your 2% today?
All right, so I'm going to introduce our guests for this episode. So we have 2 guests today. They are Kevin and Mallory Everitts, who have been long-time Redeemer City Church members. Yeah. Part of the original. We're going to probably hit on that a little bit when we get to their story. But yeah, they go back to the very beginning at Redeemer. And so Kevin is a bank teller by day, but a musical savant by night, right? Like you used to
I was a bank teller. I'm still at the same bank, but now I'm in the back office. Now I'm in operations. So
okay,
fancy.
Ooh, it is so fancy. Okay, and then I'm going to butcher this too because I had to ask her when she got here. I was like, Mallory, what is your title actually? Because she's like a big deal in education, but I didn't know exactly what you did. Yeah. So tell us.
So I'm the director of institutional effectiveness.
Big deal.
At Calvary Christian High School. So I oversee academics, accreditation, anything that might give you a headache in the education world. That's mine.
Wow. Okay.
So,
oh man.
See, I live there.
Big deal. That's huge though. Okay, so I didn't know that.
That is a role that people need to be very thankful for.
Yeah.
The person who fills that role.
Yes, you have an accredited high school diploma.
Yeah.
It's important.
Yes.
You can go to college.
I worked in online admissions for colleges, and part of that was we had to make sure that when people were submitting their all
transcripts and stuff
that they was all credited. And there were a few times where I had to break the news to somebody listen, you're not really officially educated. The state or the country has not dubbed that. So that's
terrible.
Yeah,
the initials for my position is DIE, so die.
Oh, wow. Okay.
I don't call myself I'm the die, no, but
that's one of those situations where you're allowed to make that joke and nobody else is.
Don't mock it.
Yeah, I'm sure if Kevin did, he'd be
I almost did, and I
limping his way around. Yeah.
Don't get her a desk placard that says that.
It would be very much. It would be like an Office episode joke or something.
Which we all share that in common, that we watch this show. Probably it's probably a problem.
At night.
Yeah.
Yes. We do too.
It's like therapy. It's like my wind down.
Yeah. It's a comfort show. You always know how it's going to end, so it feels good to watch it.
Yeah.
That was definitely one of those things too, where when we got back, we evacuated you guys did too, right? So when we got back home.
For the second hurricane.
Yeah, and power came back on. We were able to like sit down for a minute after cleaning up for, a few days. And then like once we were able to put the office on at night and just like sit
You
there,
just
we're
felt
like,
normal again.
oh,
Normalcy
Thank
is
you.
returning.
thank you, Dwight.
Nature is healing.
Yeah.
Yeah. We'll give Dwight a shout out in
Yeah.
the podcast.
Yes.
Thanks, Rain Wilson.
Oh my
Yes.
gosh. But one more thing to add to their introduction, because obviously a very super important part of your life is your daughter, Tabitha. So tell us a
Mhm.
little bit about Tabitha.
Well, we adopted our daughter Tabitha. She was about 12 years old. This was 12 years ago
Yeah,
now.
it's 12 years
can't
ago
remember.
this month.
So it's been
October 4th.
Yeah, so half of her life, she's been with us. But yeah, we are I'm just over the moon thrilled that she's my daughter.
That's awesome.
And yeah, it's just a wonderful picture of just God's grace and His timing. And I don't know if we have time for the whole story, but
We
it's
will. We're
just,
gonna get into
yeah.
She's, I mean, you guys should be so proud. She's such, I mean, I can't even describe her. She's so sweet and fun and funny, but then she's also got this like intensity. And I've told you this before, like when she talks to you, she looks into your soul and I'm like, don't see me. I'm like, oh no. like she just has that thing. And like, I think that's a gift. A lot of people don't have that. You know?
And she's always like a good pairing for like the worship team whenever we're leading worship.
Yes.
If like Tabitha's there, then like we know if like she's
Front and
Like-
center, hands up.
I can
her
always
heart,
count
like,
on her
yeah.
to be just worshiping.
Yeah,
total
100%.
abandon.
Yeah, her heart
That's
is on her
beautiful.
sleeve, and that's that's something I envy about like people like her, is being able to just do that openly. And I'm more of an inward. If I can't, do something with an instrument or like tap away or then I get very inward in that sense. But being able to have Tabitha there whenever she's there, it's just awesome because it's like, okay, you're acting out like what we inwardly are experiencing too. Yeah.
Yeah, I love that. All right, so I feel like if you have gone to Redeemer for a long time, you do know Kevin Mallory. You've seen them there. Kevin used to lead the worship team and now serves on it. Mallory, you used to sing on the worship team.
Yes.
I've never heard it, so I don't believe it.
Oh, I've heard it.
I've never seen it.
I hear like if I'm sitting there.
Oh no, I've heard her.
Well, like, yeah.
Never-
Well, okay, yeah. I've heard her. Like, you have a beautiful voice, and so
Yeah, I always
You're
just
welcome.
said, like,
Anytime you
I'm
wanna-
fifth string, like, off the bench. Like,
No.
it's like everybody has to be out of town or sick before I'll get up there.
Yeah.
you're Keanu Reeves in The Replacements.
Yes, exactly, exactly.
Well,
Hey,
I try to encourage her to sing more often, but she's
Yeah.
so busy with
Well, yeah.
every other ministry.
Well, that's
Exactly,
That's
yeah.
what I was going to say
Church.
too, is because you do the children's ministry.
Like, what do you not
I
do?
know.
Should be the question.
I
That's
said we were going to
probably-
title this episode literally "How Would Anything Get Done Around Here Without These Two?" That's the title of the episode.
Redeemer
It's a
City
working
Church,
title.
aka Mallory.
She runs everything. You do the social media.
Yes,
Right?
Yeah.
I do.
So-
Well, I don't take the pictures. I
Okay.
don't take the
Well,
pictures.
yeah,
there are
okay.
there are much other highly talented
Very
photographers that
talented.
I just take their content
Yeah.
and trying to craft it.
Yeah.
That's
We're
what
like-
I do. So I don't take the pictures.
Yeah, thanks for
full
the
time.
beautiful pictures. Who? Let's give them a shout out.
Danielle,
Danielle,
and
Danielle
Mike
Smith.
Farrett.
Mike Farrett.
They're
That's
Mike-
right.
two of
yeah.
our really great photographers
Yeah.
that
Yeah.
help us have some really great content.
Yeah, I take pictures, but you guys don't use them. It's fine. No, that's cool. So, all right, we're going to move into the first segment. It's called Story Time. So this is where, like I said, if you go to Redeemer, you know these guys, but we're going to really get to know them in this segment. And that's what this podcast is, mostly about, is telling our stories and really, our church body getting to know each other and just understanding what it means to be a culture of worship. So in this, we'll get to know them a little bit better. So tell us a little bit more. I mean, we've heard about your careers and things like that. And I guess we'll just kind of volley between you guys. Did you always want to be in banking? Like, how did you get there? What led to that? And yeah.
Well, one of my first jobs out of college was as a bank teller. Okay. And I did that for a few years until I felt the Lord calling me to full-time ministry, particularly leading worship. Yeah. And I actually got an opportunity to work full-time at a church doing worship leading and then also being the youth pastor. And so that was a great opportunity. It was a real stretch for me, especially for the youth pastor part, because that's not something I ever, saw myself doing in the past. And it was really, just God giving me the strength to do it and leading me through it, and giving me a wonderful wife to help me
Organize the
through it.
chaos.
Yeah, organize the chaos. She is the organization. I am the chaos.
So she had to organize you.
Yeah.
I have no idea what you're talking about, Kevin. I don't relate
Yeah.
a single percentage to that.
Yeah, and then eventually, about after 5 or 6 years of doing that, my brother-in-law Mitch,
know him.
he is the pastor at our church, and but he has always had a vision of being a pastor and eventually starting a church. And he came to me one day. He was working at a different church across the bay, and he just wanted to. He had a desire, and he felt the Lord calling him to start a church here in the Tampa area. And he asked if I wanted to join him, and took a lot of prayer. I even had opportunities, elsewhere, even back where I grew up in Pennsylvania, at established churches, and I just didn't feel 100% that was where the Lord was leading me to those other opportunities. Yeah. And I just knew, I feel God calling me to support Mitch in this endeavor. And, I ended up being the worship pastor. And I was doing that for 8 years until, now I'm just on the worship team, and I'm thoroughly enjoying it. I can't imagine not worshiping through music and song. So.
Yeah. Okay, that's awesome. See, I didn't know that. I think I knew you were a youth pastor. I didn't know that you had like other. Probably talking to this. Other opportunities though, but you decided to stay here and help plant the church.
It was
really
kind
cool.
of. It was weird because not weird. I think it was just God, but it was like, okay, put your house on the market, quit your job, and move to Tampa. Now, we were in South Hillsborough County, so it was like 30 minutes away.
Yeah.
So it wasn't like you were moving across the world, but it was definitely a step of faith, because he just went in to our old church and told the pastor, like, we're doing this.
Wow.
And didn't necessarily we knew he would probably need to go back, and we knew he would need to go back into the workforce, and like the traditional workforce, not vocational ministry. And like God, like, I don't know. I think you only interviewed for like 1 job or 2 jobs.
Yeah, so that's because there's obviously not a lot of pay when we're just starting a new church. So it ended up being bivocational. So since I had that banking background, my first avenue to look for jobs was in banking, and really one of the first jobs that I interviewed for, I ended up loving it. And I guess they liked me too for the Bank of Tampa, and I've been working there ever since. I've been working there 8.5 years, almost 9 years.
It was like really confirming, like with God just being like, interview, offer, like,
let's make this easy.
Yeah, it's like we knew. And God was just lining up those things. It took a while for us to sell our house, but that was like during the time when like houses weren't selling till like 6 months.
So that was a fun time.
That was a hard time for us, but we got there.
Yeah.
Figured it out. So.
Okay, that's so cool. So, and then for you, did you you had to go to school obviously to do what you do? You can't just like, hey, I'm just going to teach tomorrow. So how did you decide that's what you wanted to get into? And then
so I've kind of like been all over the map in the world of education. So I'll rewind to 7th grade. And so one of my teachers pulled me aside in 7th grade and said to me, Mallory, you're going to be a counselor someday. And I was like, 12, like 13. I was like, no. And maybe it was just because I was like the kid in the class that wanted everybody to be friends. Like, why can't we just all be friends?
Right.
And so so that just planted a seed in my brain. Yeah. And I was like, okay. So God just took that moment. And so when I went to college, my intention was to become like a high school guidance counselor. Like that's what I wanted to do. Like I helped all my friends like fill out their college applications. I felt, all that stuff. And so went to college, got my degree in psychology, and then went straight into grad school because you can't be a high school guidance counselor without a master's degree. Like they don't let you do that.
Psychology. I did not know that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. It's like, psychology. And then I have a master's in school and school counseling. So that's where all my ed classes and all that stuff came in.
Cool.
So did that. I was school counselor. Taught what else did I've taught? American government.
Oh, geez.
SAT prep. There was even a stint where I was teaching elementary computers. Like I did a lot of that, but mainly school counselor. And then I just kind of moved through God just opened doors, and I was a middle school principal for maybe 5 or 6 years there. And so and that's where I kind of ended up. So I've done a little bit of everything in the world of education.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow. Okay. So the psychology thing is so interesting. And like, it's just interesting to me. Anyway, so we can do a whole other podcast about that. But okay. So now you know that if you have a conversation with Mallory in the hallway, she's going to be like reading your mind. So, just be careful. Tell me your story.
I can identify your Myers-Briggs personality type, your Enneagram.
She'll give you an unofficial diagnosis on the side. It's cool. Okay. So one of the questions we always ask too is, how did you get involved at Redeemer? But we know that story, right? So I think some people know like how the church got started, and Mitch even shared like how it got planted and all that. And your family, right? So it was just organic, right? Like it was just kind of one of those things where he was like, hey, come with me, come do this thing. And then you are related to his bride. So a lot of family connection there. So yeah. So I guess, I mean, there may not be even much more to unpack, but like, how did that come about? Just conversation, just Mitch saying, hey, come with me.
Yeah, I think so. Kevin and Mitch grew up together.
Yeah, okay.
And so Camden and I grew up together.
They're sisters.
Whether you wanted to or not.
Yes. Yes, I have other stories about that. So that's a whole, that's a whole other podcast.
Yeah, we got another podcast for that one.
But Kevin and Mitch grew up together, same like church, same Christian school, those kind of things. So I think just the way God wove our stories together was just, we were always intentionally supposed to do life together in some capacity and fashion. And like when Camden and Mitch got married the year after Kevin and I got married, and so we just naturally did a lot of things in our life was just very much like similar timing. We were at the same church together for a while until Mitch and Camden moved across the bay, and then it was just natural that God would bring us back together. So I think, it really was like a phone call. Kevin, like Mitch's phone call to Kevin was just like, hey, we're going to do this church plant thing. You want to come with us? And it was probably, I had a sense for a while that God was unsettling my nest. And the way it's always been with Kevin and I, we've been married 17 years.
Woo!
17 years. Wow.
Yeah.
Congratulations.
17 years. Thank you. Since we've been married 17 years, God always has to get me ready before he gets Kevin ready. So I think that's probably because Kevin is a lot more like trusting and acts in a lot more like pure faith than I do. Like I have to know the motives behind everything.
Mm-hmm.
I have to know like the reason why. I have to know like what's the process going to be. And Kevin's like, okay, God, you said it, we do it.
Yeah.
And so God was unsettling my nest for a while. And so I kept saying, Kevin, like, there's a change coming. There's a change coming. Kevin's like,
wow,
what are you talking about? Like, everything's good. Everything's fine. But I think that's because when Mitch called, Kevin, I don't know, I think we took 2 weeks to pray about it.
Yeah, it was about that.
Yeah, I think we just decided, let's pray about it for 2 weeks. We weren't going to talk about it because I knew that I can talk Kevin into anything. I can talk him out of anything, you know, because I just use my powers of persuasion. And so I knew that I couldn't do that. Like, we couldn't talk about it. Like, we needed just to commit our time to the Lord and just not talk about it and then come back together. And so we prayed for about 2 weeks. Kevin came back, and I think he had a very strong sense that this is what we were to do. And I was like, me too. Let's do it.
Yeah.
Let's do it. So I was ready. God had already got me ready, and he was just ready to like step out whenever God told him to do it.
Yeah. And by the time it was time to move, I was ready at that point too. Yeah. I felt the call.
Interesting.
Yeah.
I feel like it's just like God, when he puts two people together, he already knows these things are coming and how perfectly he designed you both to be the way you are so that those situations would pan out the way that they did. It's just like, he's just such a perfect designer. It's crazy.
Absolutely.
Okay. So we also know that you guys serve in various ministries around Redeemer. We talked about some of them. You do the worship team now, and you do everything. So I think we've covered that one. So hold on. Wait, let's see what else. Okay. This is a big one. First of all, I'm going to totally interrupt this right now because I have a question. Do you guys know what you are in the APEST?
Yes.
What are you?
I am a apostle.
Knew it. What are you?
Yeah, I think I'm pastoral. Oh, what was the second one?
Teacher?
Yes, because it would be teacher, prophet, apostle, shepherd.
Shepherd.
Bam.
Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
I had to ask the question. We're going to put a link to the APEST test on here. I think everybody should take it. We went through a season at Redeemer where people were taking it. But I needed to know that because it just makes sense. I feel like with both of your giftings and the way that you're wired, I love that. Yeah. Okay. So how did you both meet Jesus? We'll start with you, Mallory. Okay. If you want to just, go as deep as you want.
So, I grew up in a family that had always followed Jesus, but in a very different church body than what we're currently in. Mm-hmm. And so my parents were saved right before I was born. So in the church that we were in, it was called United Baptist, but it was think like Appalachia. Like in the holler.
Yeah.
And one room church.
Wow.
There's something about that though. I kind of like.
Well, I mean, not like it was like no makeup and like skirts to your ankles kind of church, but it was very much it rooted out of like very poor people that lived in Appalachia in like the 1800s, and that church culture just kind of stayed, and so they didn't have like musical instruments in the church. I think that was originally because they were too poor to have musical instruments, and it was just like a tradition that they kept. And so, and church services were like 3 hours long.
Oh, wow.
There would be like 2 or 3 preachers. There was always like 30 minutes of singing before. So that was...
But with no instruments.
Yeah, with no instruments. But you get those beautiful like...
those harmonies,
but almost like the twangy harmonies. Yeah. So it was a very interesting like church to grow up in. And part of it was very charismatic in the aspect of there was a lot of emotionality in everything. And so as a result, I watched people come to know the Lord through toil. Like there was a lot of emotion to it. So I always thought that I had to have a lot of, tears, or there was a lot of heavy emphasis on repentance. And so as a kid, I didn't necessarily feel like I had a whole lot to repent of.
Yeah.
Right. Like I was a kid.
Right.
But anyways, the Lord did start working with me, and my grandfather was a preacher, and he had other preacher friends, and he had been diagnosed with a terminal illness. So my family was here in Florida. That's how we got to Florida. We were caring for him because he was ill, and he wanted to go to his preacher friend's church in Georgia for their like revival camp meeting kind of thing. And so it was one of those camp meetings, church services where they have church in the morning and church in the evening. So you have like a 10 o'clock service, and then you break for lunch, and then you come back and you do another service. It was like hardcore.
It's an intensive,
So it was like a Tuesday morning. I'm like 12 in this service. This church did not have a bathroom in it.
Uh-oh.
They did not have a bathroom. It was literally in the holler of Georgia. The name of the church was Long Swamp Baptist Church.
Oh,
that is awesome.
Okay.
Yeah, so
just setting the scene.
Yes, yes. Just kind of get a picture, like white clapboard church, like wooden pews, kind of like what we have at Redeemer now. Yeah. But sitting kind of in the first 3 or 4 rows, and the conviction of the Holy Spirit was on me. I don't know. I just felt heavy. So much so, like, I think I got up to go to the bathroom like 3 or 4 times.
Right.
And so it was right at the end of the service, and, they're kind of saying, like, anybody want to give a testimony? Anybody else? It was like those things, like, church was done. Yeah. Like, they were just doing the one more time, and whatever. I was a crier. I'll just pause. I was a crier when I was a kid. And so when, like, I cried heavy. It was like,
Yeah.
like that kind of stuff.
Right.
And I just collapsed in my mom's lap, and I just wept. I don't think my 12-year-old brain really like comprehended like what was happening. It was heavy on me. And I probably cried for about 45 minutes to get like for allow my body to just like calm down and actually like pray.
Right.
And it was at that moment where I gave my life to Jesus. So I kind of like, as soon as I did that, or that moment happened, or that peace that passes all understanding kind of came over, I just kind of like sat up and I looked around, and literally the church service had stopped. Now there was maybe like 40 people, 50 people in the room, but they had moved the pews. All those people were down on the ground around me, praying, and they were singing. They were like just singing songs. Like, I don't remember what they were, but they were just praying and singing. And that was probably one of my most like impactful moments.
I bet,
in my life. And that was like one of the first like truly in my first moments as like a baby Christian, where to see God's people just like on their face before the Lord, lifting this little girl who they didn't really even know, because we were just visiting, before the throne. They didn't know what my problem was. I think they assumed they knew what the issue was, but they didn't know what was going on. And so I gave my life to Jesus. Like 5 days later, I got baptized, and I got baptized in a swimming pool.
That's
because
awesome.
we didn't have baptistry at the church we were at, so got baptized in the swimming pool, and that is where I would say like my journey started.
Wow. Okay.
That's
All right.
amazing.
That's we could talk about that also like for a long time, because I think we talked about it with Mitch a little bit, and even in Petey's episode about like this experiential salvation, and like if it's not this grand huge thing, then it doesn't count or something. And it's like, that's crazy talk, but you did have
I had the grand huge thing,
that.
and that was probably, I think it was because just the emotionality. I mean, I was 12. I didn't know how to handle our process, the Spirit working in my life, and I didn't have the words or the vocabulary or anything like that to try and explain what was happening. And that was my personality. Like, I was a very sensitive soul as a kid, and like I said, I cried at everything. So it was just naturally that I cried at this too.
I love that.
Well, in a sense, it's like a beginning of understanding,
exactly.
of a personal relationship with God, which is, I mean, that's a beautiful, it's a beautiful story.
Yeah, totally. All right, your turn.
Yeah. I mean, I didn't have a grand, experiential moment like that, but I grew up in the Northeast in Pennsylvania, and there's a lot of Catholic presence there, and my family comes from a very Catholic background. All my cousins and everything are still well entrenched in the Catholic faith, and my mom grew up in that. My dad did as well, but there was a time when I was very little, probably just a few years old. One of my dad's coworkers actually invited him to a church that was nearby. It was a Baptist church, and my mom just happened to be starting a job that was just past that church, and they happened to have a daycare and preschool at this same location at the church. And so I started going there, really hearing scripture and Bible even as a young kid. And I ended up, staying there, long story short, all the way through 12th grade. But looking back now, I realized, I had heard a lot of scripture, not just attending the church there, but also every day at school, hearing Bible lessons and just hearing the plain, just salvation message, each and every day. And, the Holy Spirit really grabbed a hold of me. And, it's kind of like that faith as a child moment. I literally experienced that at 6 years old in first grade. And I remember pondering that coming home from school one day, and it was really weighing on my heart. And I remember exactly where I was. I was next to my bed after school one day, and I just knelt beside the bed, and I said what a lot of people will call the sinner's prayer, and I accepted Jesus into my heart at 6 years old, because I just felt the Holy Spirit calling, and was baptized. Actually, it was a couple years later. I was baptized at 8 years old, and like I said, I was in that church and that school all the way through 12th grade, and all of my childhood friends were there. And so,
Wow.
Yeah.
I love that.
Yeah.
I love that. That is quite young.
Yeah.
But the Holy Spirit's going to do what He's going to do, no matter how old you are. And whether it's like kneeling by your bed as a child in your own quiet moment, or surrounded by people singing over you and praying over you, like it's just so interesting how God can do it. The same thing, the same miracle, and in so many different ways with different people. And we've heard, different stories, like Mitch's story. We heard Petey's story, and like all these salvation stories. And God's just like he's so interesting. He'll do it a million different ways.
Absolutely.
It's beautiful. All right, so let me ask you this, and the answer is it cannot be because you forced us to. Why did you guys say yes to doing the podcast? Nope, can't say you forced us to do it.
I would say, and you can contradict me if I'm wrong, Kev, but in this journey, like with Redeemer, like starting way back when we came, 2016?
Yeah.
When we did this? Okay. We started in 2016 with this, but our standard answer has just been to say yes to just most anything. Unless God were to give us a reason to say no, we typically try and say yes as many times as we can, as long as it fits the margin and the all
I
those
am the
things in our life.
exact opposite. I say no when I can. No, I'm kidding. I wish I was kidding. So okay, I love that though. Okay,
yeah, I think also I think it's important, as believers to share our story.
Yeah.
And I think as the church body, whether Big C Church or local church, a way to build each other up is to share those stories of our our spiritual walk. Just so maybe there's a nugget in there that can build somebody up or provide encouragement.
I think it's like very first century church. Like, what did they do? They like hung out at each other's houses.
Yeah.
They read the Bible.
Yes.
They prayed. They sang, and they ate. And so,
That's my
like,
favorite part.
yeah, exactly. But like, is podcast like the new version?
Yeah.
Is that just like the 21st century version of what the first century church did?
Maybe.
So
Yeah.
I don't know. Maybe.
Yeah. Okay. That's cool. I love that. All right. So we're going to do one more kind of like funny or interesting thing from both of you. And then we're going to move into the actual like 2% piece of this.
serious
So
stuff.
you go first, Mallory. Ladies first. So
Okay,
funny or interesting.
funny or interesting. So I did think about this, and I don't know, some people may know this about me, but I am a closet Trekkie. Yes.
Okay.
Okay. What?
Yes, I am a closet Trekkie, dressed up as like
Wait, that's this one. Wait, how do you?
like this.
Yeah.
Live long and prosper.
Live long and prosper.
Got it. Yeah. So I am that. I dressed up 4th grade. I was I was I don't know, like first officer of the Starship Enterprise. I'll have to
That's
find
awesome.
a picture and
That's
share with
fantastic.
everybody.
Yes, you do. You need to get a picture.
But my dad loved Star Trek, and he loved the original series. And then when I was growing up, elementary years, 90s ish. That's when the Next Generation came out, and so my dad watched that. Was it Monday nights or Sunday nights or something like that, and I watched it with him, and I just really grew to love it. And so I do love Star Trek.
That's a good memory.
Closet Trekkie.
Okay. All right. What's yours?
I think mine kind of goes along with that 90s, growing up in the 90s theme, because mine, the pop culture, but I was a huge fan of Steve Urkel back in the day.
Oh,
And-
Family Matters, man.
Was
And
it
I-
Friday night?
My whole life, I've loved doing impressions. Probably my first impression was Steve Urkel.
Yeah.
Don't ask me to do it now because my
Yes,
voice has
please.
changed.
Please.
I wasn't. As soon as my voice changed in middle school, I wasn't able to do it
That's
anymore.
Kevin's gift. He'll be
But
sharing
it's
that later.
You
Yeah.
can do mini impersonation.
Really?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
You got to do
Like,
one.
You got any cheese?
Oh my
Lara.
gosh. Some of the younger folks that go to church with us, it's going to go right over your heads.
Yeah.
We're going to put
Just
a link.
Google it. Just
Yeah,
Google
I
it.
almost wore my Steve Urkel shirt with
Google-
a big face
Oh
on
my
it. But
Google
Goodness.
TGIF.
Yeah, TGIF. That's what
Yeah.
it's called.
Family Matters.
Best night
so
of
I-
TV in the week.
I tried to recreate the TGIF sequence because it always started with Full House,
Full House, yeah.
then
Step
Step
by
by Step, then Boy Meets World.
Yeah.
It changed.
It changed.
I'll tell you-
over the
I'll
years.
tell you what, talking about, being a Trekkie, I was a nerd for TGIF. Back in the days when they had VHS, I would watch TGIF every week religiously.
Yep.
And then but I would also record it on VHS,
Mm-hmm.
and
learn
and then
how
I
to
would
do
watch it back
Yep.
that weekend because I was so into it, and then I would just re-record it the next week.
That was the
Yeah.
original pirating.
Yep.
Yeah.
Well, I say original, but like
Original.
Ask
for us.
Shamden
Binging.
Coon about Full House because the reruns of Full House were on at 4 and 4:30 every day.
Yes.
We'd have to get home from school so she could record. And she was very upset because there was one time we didn't get home to record, and so there was a 2-episode gap because she was trying to get them all in
Oh,
chronological
yeah.
order.
Is that the one where DJ Tanner cried and it was so emotional?
Probably, I don't know.
Yeah.
But
That's the only one I really remember. Yeah.
Full House was
Yeah.
was our jam.
All right, well,
was
we're
the
learning some
bee's
stuff about
knees, yep.
Camden too. All right, we have to have her on and have her defend herself. I don't know. We'll see.
Yes.
Okay. All right. So Trekkie, TGIF nerd. Okay. Well, there you go.
Family Matters in particular.
With Urkel.
Yeah, Steve
All right,
Urkel.
We'll have to get you to do one of your impressions, other than Urkel too. Okay. So let's move into the 2% segment. These questions, some of them, yeah, we'll volley back and forth just to kind of get both of your opinions. But we'll start with both of you because you do sing and you've got other giftings, obviously. How did you discover your artistic talent? And then like at what point did you go, okay, I really want to use this for the Lord? You know?
Okay, I'll go first.
Yeah.
Okay. So to talk about my singing was I tried piano, like 3rd grade piano lessons, didn't like the practice. I figured singing would be easier because like you don't have to sit at the piano.
Right.
So I did do voice lessons for, I don't know, 4th, 5th grade, I guess. Transitioned to guitar and bass there in middle school. And then just kind of stopped that. I really kind of was like a musical theater geek in high school. I really loved that. Continued that in college. That's how Kevin and I met.
Oh,
Nice.
Musical theater in college and Fiddler on the Roof. So...
Oh, yeah. I guess we didn't ask y'all's meeting story.
Yeah,
Okay.
that's what we did. We met in college, and we were both cast in Fiddler on the Roof love interests. So we spent many months together
Practicing. Right?
practicing
Yeah.
that we were in love, and then we fell in love.
Method.
Over 20
That's where he
years ago now.
discovered method acting, right?
Yes, it was 20 years ago. 20 years ago. So
Very
yeah.
cool.
So I guess that's probably I just kind of transitioned through that, and really do love I think I'm more of like an actress, musical theater kind of person. But that's something Kevin and I like to do together.
And you have a Paul McCartney bass.
I do have a Paul
which
McCartney bass, yes.
I've used that a few times, which thank you.
Okay, so I didn't even know you played.
I do, not very well.
That's so cool.
No.
Okay, but girl basses are so cool.
If you asked me
You
to
gotta
play a
own it.
song, I'd have to practice for a really long time
That's
now.
okay. That's fine.
I'd have to practice for a really long time.
It's gonna happen.
Petey, she's on the rotation next week.
It's gonna happen.
That's so cool. Okay, and what about you?
Yeah. If I look back through my early years, I was always into music. I was, talking about those '90s things. I had the boombox, and I would record myself just like being like a DJ to the radio, and then I would play. I would record the radio onto it, and I'm like, "This is Q102," and I would did all that kind of stuff.
Yes.
And I was always interested in music. I was interested in harmonies and all that kind of stuff. But around 10 years old, and normally the parents will have their kids get into music lessons, whether piano or guitar. I actually asked my parents, "Can I take piano lessons?"
Wow, yeah.
Because we had just acquired from a cousin or something, like an old organ and I would practice. I would just play around on that. And so I just
in your home?
yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Well, it wasn't a huge one. It was just
Okay.
a small
Those electric organs.
electric
Yeah.
organ.
Okay.
And I started taking piano lessons at 10 years old, and we eventually got an upright piano, so it was a little more conducive to playing piano.
Yeah.
And I loved it. I would actually practice too much that my older brothers would actually get annoyed. Like, "Kevin, will you stop?"
Yep.
But I loved it. And then even around that time as a little kid, I would make up songs. I would make up even raps at times.
That's so funny.
But the funny thing is, when I was probably middle school or early high school, I got a guitar and I started picking that up. And the reason was one of my older brothers was like, Kevin, you play piano now, but if you really want to attract the females, and I'm just being totally honest here,
They do.
you should start playing
It works,
guitar.
Yeah.
Hey, you've got a female
Yeah.
that
It
likes
worked.
music.
And it worked.
So
No, I started playing guitar, and actually because I knew kind of music theory, I knew how to play piano. I kind of taught myself from there. It took several years, but I taught myself guitar because I had the basics of piano. And for any kids out there, any parents, by the way, if you want to get your kids into music, give them piano lessons because that'll teach you a whole lot.
Damn.
But,
Yeah, that's good.
yeah, and so I've always loved music, and I can't stop.
I love that. So was there a point for either of you, both of you, when you said, okay, this is really cool? Because I know you played like in a band, right? Like like playing restaurants, bars, that kind of thing.
Yeah,
right? Like,
it was like a cover band.
So what point were you like, all right, I want to use this for the glory of the Lord, and this is like, I mean, I guess when Mitch maybe asked you to come join him at the church, right? But you were doing this before. You were a worship leader. So.
Well, what got me into leading in front of people was when I started playing guitar. Our youth group, when I was a teenager, actually the music for it, they didn't have like a band or anything. This was the 90s. But it was all acoustic guitars.
It was a weird time.
But it was, it was all acoustic, but it was like 5 or 6 people up there just playing acoustic guitars.
Oh, okay.
But the cool thing about that was because I was so new at it, I was able to like kind of fade back and like blend in with everybody else. And that helped, help my stage presence because I didn't have to, be the one out there.
Yep.
And so I eventually, when I got to college, on Wednesday nights, I would actually help lead worship in a local youth group. And that actually helped kind of build my confidence a little bit more.
Yeah.
But it really wasn't until after college when I graduated. I took actually my first job out of college. I was at a call center as my job, and
Customer service.
it was customer service call center.
So
And the hours were really weird, and it kind of took me away. I was actually leading worship. By that time, I had met Mallory, and I was leading music in the youth group that was at her local church. And that job actually took me away from that. And at that time, I felt extremely miserable.
Oh.
And I was like, well, why do I feel so miserable? And I'd never felt this way before about ministry. And I was like, I need to get back into worship ministry and leading worship. And I ended up leaving that job, and that's actually when I took the bank job. But it was that moment. I was 22 years old, and I was like, this is what I want to do.
Yeah.
I can't not do this. And I just felt the Holy Spirit just tugging on me right there.
Yeah, that's pivotal. I feel like you guys are very similar to where, like, if you're not playing worship music as part of a worship team and like having that connection with the guys and the gals on the team, that you guys become miserable.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's just something inside of you that I think God has gifted you both with.
Yeah, it feels like something's not
Yeah.
sitting right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, they're just hardwired that way.
Yeah. I think
Yeah.
So why aren't you in Wicked? Like what made you go?
That's why
Listen.
if people would ever say to me like, "Hey, if you aren't doing what you're doing right now, what would you do?" I would be like, "I would be a Broadway star."
See?
There we go.
I definitely do not have that level of talent. I just really enjoy it. Just really
You can
enjoy
appreciate it. Yeah.
Yeah, I just I feel it.
Yeah.
So yeah, that not my level of talent. God has gifted me other places, but I do have like a love and appreciation for it, and I'll come off the bench if I need to.
Okay.
But yeah,
remember
that's
that.
like I said, 5th string, 6th string. But I think
Keanu
honestly,
Reeves. Remember,
yeah,
Keanu Reeves. You're
exactly.
Keanu Reeves.
I think probably it was something that Kevin and I do together. You know, like as when we like started dating, and it was just something that we would just do together, like sing together, or that kind of stuff.
Well,
Karaoke.
when you guys okay.
Yeah.
See, we need a karaoke night, Redeemer
Karaoke,
style.
yeah.
When you guys came over for our worship event that we had at the house, we've talked about it on the podcast. It was the first time I'd ever seen you guys sing and play together. You played, I think it was like a Billy Joel song.
Oh yeah,
Maybe
yeah.
Elton John. I don't know. One of
No,
those.
it
I
was
get them
Billy. It
confused.
was a Billy Joel song.
Yeah.
Thank you. I know that's probably
It
blasphemy
was like
to you
I
music
forget
lovers,
what the
but-
name of the song is, but it's like a very ballady song.
Scenes from an Italian Restaurant.
Yes.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes, I remember that because it had such an interesting name. But you sang and you played, and you guys were like, and I was like looking at them like, I've never heard them even do this together. So it was really cool to hear
Yeah.
you sing and belt it out. And,
We love this. Like, there's the 70s, like
Mhm.
Billy Joel, Elton John.
Oh, yeah.
Like that genre, we both really love.
cool. Okay, so do you guys like just do that at home, you and Tabitha, and you guys just like play?
Well, I will just say this: we have tried really hard to pass our love of multiple genres of music on to Tabitha.
Yeah,
Oh.
We have not been super successful.
yeah.
Okay.
Well, it's because you're the ones doing it. You're
Yeah.
the parents that are
Yeah.
putting. Yeah.
I've,
She
I've
needs
tried to
someone
I've
her
tried to
age to
open
tell
her
her.
up to more musical genres, but
She's just gonna love like Chris Stapleton.
Oh, okay.
I mean,
Well, she's
that-
not
well,
wrong.
she's- I mean,
there's
at
nothing
least
wrong
not
with
a-
Chris Stapleton.
Yeah, no,
Not a bad
there's nothing
taste.
wrong. It's just like she's got one lane and she just rides in that one lane really well.
Yep.
There
So-
you go.
Yep.
There you go.
She orders the same thing from the from the restaurant every
She
single
knows
time.
it works.
That's
so
Emily.
it's good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That is our daughter as well.
Yeah.
All right, so let's ask this because when we talk about the 2% and this culture of worship, which we've covered extensively in previous episodes, if you're like, okay, what is even the 2%? This is my first episode ever. Go back and listen to the first 3 or 4 episodes. We talk a lot about the 2% and it being this culture of worship and how it only takes a very small fraction of people in a body to change the culture of that body. And so, we want to be the kind of place at Redeemer where we are a culture of worship 24/7, 365, just fully embodied worshipers all the time, not just on Sundays, not just when you go through the doors of your church building, but everywhere in every aspect of life. And so one thing that we think is really important when we think about worship is God is a God of beauty. He created beauty. And so to us as a collective, it's super important to know like what makes you tick? Like what do you find beautiful? What is artistically beautiful to you and like what inspires you? I'll go with you first.
So I would probably say what I find really beautiful is probably a little bit of how God has, what we talked about a little bit ago, how God has hardwired me. And we talked about like our Myers-Briggs code and our Enneagram and all that. Like I'm a 2-wing one. I'm like I'm a nurturer, I'm a guardian. Like, so for me, I find beauty in community. And so I'm an extrovert. Kevin is an introvert. But I just love like being in with people, like whatever that was. And so like even at the very beginning when like Redeemer started and it was like 10 people, it was like we're in this together, guys. Like it's this journey like together. So I just like being a part of it. I don't necessarily feel like I need to be the one leading the pack or anything like that, just to be a part of the community that is, and whatever I can do to help like facilitate that. So, whatever I can do to help serve, I guess.
Awesome.
Yeah.
For you?
I mean, what I find beautiful, especially from an artistic standpoint, obviously I know I'm a piano player, and obviously I find a lot of piano music beautiful. But what really I think is great is like beautiful harmonies. I love, growing up, I would like try to listen to songs and just pick out the different vocal parts.
Yeah.
And I would listen to things like Boys to Men.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
And like and I would like, it's like, oh, that's Wanye singing there. That's like, I would try to mimic it.
Yeah.
And now when I listen to a song, I hear the melody before I hear, or not the melody, I hear the harmony before I hear the melody. And I just love especially when just voices come together. I had a choir director say one time that when you have harmonies, you want it to sound like it's one voice, and when you do it right.
Yeah.
And I just love it.
Yeah. There's something beautiful about that. Like the different parts, but how they come together into like one thing.
Yeah.
I get goosebumps when I hear a really like clutch harmony, and it's just like it's otherworldly. It really is. It's like oh, that's nice. So I get that. I agree with that. You said this is interesting. I'm gonna go off script here again. So you're an extrovert and you're an introvert. Do you find yourself like more recharged when you're around people? Then, like, does that amp you up?
Yeah,
Okay.
absolutely. Like we were just talking about, like we host a city group at our house, and it'll be like 6:00 on a Wednesday and you're coming home from work and you're like, can I do this?
Mm-hmm.
And then like all of a sudden there's people in your house and they're eating food and they're talking and we're laughing and they leave and I'm like, it takes me a hot minute to wind down. Like,
Yeah.
after they're gone, I'm like,
Yep.
I got to do some other things, or I got to watch a show, or I got to do something to like bring myself down. So I do get a little bit of a rush from being with people.
Okay. Wow. All right. And you recharge being alone by yourself.
Yeah, I mean, the pandemic was great. I mean, no, it wasn't. No, but I mean, like, any introverts out there know what I'm talking about. The pandemic was not great, but
We know what you meant.
no, but I'm saying, like,
For those of us still left.
That's going to be the soundbite for this episode.
but yeah, that's going to be the opening soundbite.
Didn't you just say this weekend, like the quote from Dwight, we need a new plague?
Yeah.
That is true.
No, but I mean, like, when I get around groups of people, I just have to be, in a comfortable setting there.
Yeah.
Once I warm up, I'm pretty good, but I just get awkward around people.
Yeah, I do too.
I feel awkward.
I
And then I kind of end up acting like, speaking of, comedy references, I end up like Chandler, where my defense mechanism is humor.
Yeah.
And I just use jokes and stuff like that. So
Yeah. I feel as I get older, I was an extrovert when I was a kid, but I feel as I get older, I'm becoming more of an introvert. And it's so weird to flip-flop, but yeah, I'm that way now.
yeah.
I need to be alone a little bit more. But then if I'm alone too long, I get stir crazy. And I'm like, I need people. I don't even care if they're strangers. I just like need to be around people. So
The crazy thing was when I was really young, when I was like, kindergarten, first grade, I would talk all the time, and I would just be like out loud, like shouting to everybody. And then I realized, like, around middle school, I'm like, I gotta stop doing that. I'm putting my foot in my mouth a lot.
I don't think I realized that till I was like 25. But yes, I did. I had the same experience.
See, I mean, I was an extrovert for the most part growing up, but like my parents would always tell me like, you're mumbling because I wouldn't speak up.
Yeah.
But like, but I started, getting really appreciative of alone time, I guess. And so then as I got older, like now it's one of those things that if like I could be very reclusive and then start to enjoy it more and more. And like, I have to pull myself, like sometimes community is intentional for me.
Absolutely. No, there's a difference,
yeah.
I think, between being introverted and intentionally isolating yourself, which can be dangerous.
Yeah.
Well, like with me as an extrovert, like we're talking about like spiritual disciplines and practicing the way, and that is something like silence and solitude. I'm like, oh man, that is tough for me. Not only just because I'm an extrovert, but also I'm used to like multitasking, pretty much 24/7. So just to even like narrow my focus, that has been a challenge. So that is a spiritual discipline that I have not yet mastered.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. I mean, I'm with, I like being alone now to recharge, but even when I'm alone, the mind is just racing.
Still going.
Yeah. I feel like David said, I have to command my soul to praise the Lord because it's like, it's a discipline. It's a muscle.
It's funny because at times like Jamie we'll be in the house for like on a weekend and we won't have any plans for that day. And so we'll be here for maybe about an hour or two, and then I can just tell.
Like, time to go.
She'll be like, hey, so what do you guys want to do now?
Yeah.
And so I'm like, all right, stir crazy.
Make it a plan. Yeah.
All right, let's let's go do something.
All right. So the next question, as we've described the 2% and, trying to make that number bigger, obviously in the way of, hey, we don't want it to just be a small fraction of people that feel like they're fully embodied worshipers of Christ, like all the time. This needs to be a lifestyle. What does it mean to you to be a part of the 2%?
I try and make my answer yes, as much as I possibly can. And because Kevin and I made this like intentional move to like do this Redeemer City Church thing, I don't feel like I don't know my life without being a part of that over these last 8 years or so. So it has become like ingrained and as a part of like who we are, our culture as a family. Yeah. That's just like what we do. Like, I don't think Tabitha knows like how to do life without like, well, where am I serving? Where am I going? What am I like? It's just a part of the ethos of like what we've tried to make our family about. And I don't try and say that in like a bragging fashion. It's just like we made this intentional decision 8 years ago, and we jumped in with both feet, and until God pulls us out, that's what we're going to do.
I like what you said. It's an intentional, and it became a rhythm of life.
Yeah.
And a lot of habits, take a while to get going. And breaking bad habits, also take a while to stop.
Take longer.
And it takes dedication, but it takes, just actively doing what you need to do and making it that regular habit. And I think that's what we've done with, serving in the church. We've made it a priority and we've made it something that's just a natural rhythm of our life.
So, and I think the beauty, another just like God wink, if you will, is about Redeemer City Church specifically, is in Mitch's episode, we talked about this. We called it the theology of the ordinary. And it takes that kind of disciplined, I called it boring, and I'm going to keep saying boring because I think it makes Mitch mad. But like the boring stuff, like you have to find solitude. You've got to sit and you've got to read the word, and you've got to sit and you've got to pray and you've got to meditate and you've got to clear your brain. And it's like, oh, but I have to command my soul to do it because I'm thinking about the dishes that need to be done and the laundry that needs to be folded. And there's just so much going on, but it's like that discipline and the habits that become the rhythm of life. And it's so funny because I think every episode now we have mentioned this theology of ordinary, because that is what it takes. The theology of ordinary and all that boring discipline stuff that we all hate so much. That's what makes life beautiful, truly, because it all culminates into the rhythm of life, which eventually becomes second nature. And so now Tabby doesn't know anything different. And I think that's beautiful. I don't think that's braggadocious. I think that, I think a lot of parents aspire to have that be their rhythm of life so that their kids don't know any different.
Yeah. And our parenting philosophy and that kind of stuff is a little bit different because we didn't raise her from birth. Like we got a preteen. And so those types of things, like the importance of rhythm and the importance of routine and the importance of consistency, and like for her to be able to expect the expected, and to have the consistency of like dad was always there and mom was always there was really important to us. So we just went ahead and church was just a natural part of that integration of we go every Sunday, we serve, we do these things, and we don't know life without it.
And that's beautiful because, like, I can say for myself, because Kevin and I are very similar. Well, and same with you, Mallory. It's just if something feels like off sync if you're not serving in some capacity. And
what he's saying is, I'm not like that at all. So
no,
so good.
Use your words, not mine. Anyway, but
I'll own it.
But from that perspective, like that was something that I was exposed to as a child by my parents. My dad was a deacon at the church. My dad served in all the areas that I never ever want to serve in, which is finance committee, deacons, all these areas,
like trustee,
all the areas that make like the pastor be like, oh, can't do that. No, but no, he served those kinds of roles, and then my mom was heavily involved in children's ministries, her in their garage. She still has Tupperware bins full of her her Bible characters,
flannel graphs.
Yeah, and she designed full outfits, full like professional puppets, like all these things. So she went nuts with that. But anyway, my church and school were combined. They were part of the same ministry. So whenever I wasn't in school, I was with one of my parents at the church all the time, and so I was just so exposed to having a servant's heart, in the church. Like, we're not just going to go attend and everything. We're going to go and do something. Like, we're going to be there. We're going to help out in some way. So when I got older, that made it so much easier for me to kind of feel like I need to be serving in some way,
Yeah, it does shape your children. I did not have a similar upbringing, so probably explains a lot about me.
I say that because for Tabitha's sake, you're exposing her to something that's beautiful, like serving in a church, not going to be served, but going to serve.
And it was really important for us to show that, number one, it's like we can still give, and it didn't necessarily take away from our family, because I think I grew up in an era of church ministry, not that I saw this in my family, but I saw it in a lot of my friends' family, where it was one way at church, but another way at home.
Yes,
Or
that is pervasive in the church.
Or church took away from their family. Like, mom and dad were so heavily involved that it almost felt like that family was lacking.
Yeah.
And so it's a pendulum swing, and it's a balance that we have really worked hard to try and find, like, where we can still give out of give of our talents, out of our generosity, but it not take away from our primary ministry, which was to love and raise Tabitha.
That's such a good word. That's the balance. That's such a good word.
Yep.
How do you? So I guess let me ask this: keeping yourself. I think we talked a little bit about how you guys keep yourself there, and I think you nailed it. It's finding that balance, like not giving too much, but being willing to say yes. How would you challenge folks that are like, I don't know if I'm like sold on this idea about like in this culture of worship. Like I come to church and I worship and I sing the songs and like, but like I've got my life, my work life, or I've got like this life, and then I have my church life. Like how would you challenge folks to make it a lifestyle?
I think, obviously from a biblical perspective, it's important to have that personal, time spent with God. But I think it's just as important to have that collective time with the church body, and that it's so important to meet with your local church and to spend time with them, worshiping, to love on them, to love the community with them, to spend time with them. And I think that's the main thing for me, is just, to get plugged into a church, but to do life with them.
Yeah.
I think really we're going back to, we've talked about our hardwiring and how God designed us as humans. Like if we go back to Genesis and look, God made man and said it's not good for him to be alone. And he wasn't just talking about the covenant of marriage. He was talking about like humankind. They were not meant to be alone. And God was not meant to be alone. Like he functions in a trinity, And so if for us to deny or neglect our corporate involvement in the church, whether that's serving or worship or whatever that may be, is to deny or neglect a part of us.
Yes, absolutely.
So I think we have to for us, it's just like we have to continue to feed that part of who God created us to be. In community, living in community.
Yeah, love it. What are some of, we asked this question, and you can interpret it however you want. What are some of the kind of like lesser loves that prevent people, from enmeshing in the 2%, that keep them from making it a lifestyle? And I'm not talking like sins, right? Like everybody got those, but I mean like what, like distractions and like pitfalls, things like that, that you would call out and say, hey, be careful of this, and like watch your time with this or whatever.
I would say for some people, and maybe this is what I struggled with when I was younger, is you don't think like, well, I'm not ready. Like I'm not prepared, or like I'm not far enough along in my faith journey yet, or I don't know enough scripture, or like I'm not gifted in that area, or whatever it would be. You have a lot of like, internal narrative going on, saying like all the reasons why you can't. When I know a lot of people say this, like God doesn't call like the equipped, he equips the called. And so I think that's what it is just step into it. And it doesn't, and whatever God's asking you to do, or somebody else is asking you to do, like step into it and know that God will equip you for that. And know it might not be forever too. I think there's value in recognizing that there's seasons. And I just even look at my time at Redeemer. It's like I've had different seasons of ministry at Redeemer. And so, and just step into whatever season it may be. While it may be 6 weeks or 6 months or 6 years, just step into it and know that this may not be forever. And if God removes you from it for whatever reason, it may not be because you failed or you did anything wrong or you weren't good enough. It was just, that was your season, and we're moving on to a new season.
Yeah, and that makes sense, because like Moses was telling God, like, I have a stuttering problem. Can Aaron speak for us?
Yeah.
And then like David was like, I'm just a little sheep farmer, like small little runt. I'm the runt of the family. And God said that exact thing. He's like, Like, I'm going to equip you.
Yeah, and he brings people along to like support you in
Yeah.
that. Like I always think of the story of Moses when the Israelites are battling,
Mhm.
and God says, "Hold your arms up." And as long as your arms are held, the Israelite army is going to win. But the
Mhm.
second as our arms started to fall, they started to lose. And he's like, I can't hold my arms up on my own anymore.
Yeah.
And Aaron comes along and Miriam comes along and holds his arms up for him.
Yeah.
So while you may not be able to do it on your own, God will send other people along to support
Yes.
you
Yeah.
and that. And so, and sometimes it's
And
like
you need to
may
accept
not,
that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, you may not be the person. You may not be Moses. You may be Miriam, and you may be Aaron. Like
Mhm.
you're not called to like stand in front of the church, but man, we need you to pray for our pastor.
Yep.
You know, or we need you to like. All we need you to do is set out the communion, or whatever that looks like. I think of Scott Smith.
Yeah.
Like I will name drop right there. That
Yeah.
man is a servant, and like he is at
Absolutely.
church Sunday mornings. There is no task below him. You ask him, he will do it. And so those are just the kind of people. He was like, I'll set up the tables for kids ministry. I will vacuum. I will take out the trash, whatever it needs to be. And so
Mhm.
sometimes God just may be asking like, take out the trash.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
whatever he needs.
Absolutely.
And I think the other end of the spectrum is, I think a lot of people just have a lot on their plate.
Yeah.
And
Busyness.
loading up, like especially in this culture, people just load up their schedules.
Yeah.
And say I'm
Guilty.
I'm busy with work. I've got kids. I've got so much to do around the house. I got to get this done. I'm just tired. Like it's just all those different things, and I get it. Like we all have that. But I always remember what your father said, Ken Alexander. He's like one of his quotes, and he said he wants it on his tombstone. It's all about priorities. And we can make anything if we really want something. We'll make it a priority, and we'll make it happen.
Yeah.
Yep.
And it's all about I don't want to put a guilt trip, but it was like, do we really want to live for God? Do we want to serve God?
Yeah.
And I'm talking to myself too, so
Yeah.
it's like,
Well, I mean, just look back at the last 2 weeks with all the hurricanes. I mean, like, it was so difficult being in a position like for us, and I'm just talking about us now. Like we evacuated because we were scared, and we had a disabled dog. He had just been in the hospital, and so we were like, we're just gonna get out of Dodge and deal with everything when we come back. So all the driving and the getting everywhere and the coming back, and then as soon as we got back, it wasn't like, okay, let's put our house together and our life back together. It was like we went and helped. Mitch and Cam move a freezer.
Freezer to my house.
What else?
We shoved some of our food into that freezer. There was
Okay,
there
well,
was
I'm gonna
a
get
little
some
bit in it
benefit
for
out
us.
of that.
A little bit
we did
in
that.
it for us.
We did a little bit of yard cleanup, but we were like nowhere near done. And then we went to his parents' house and we did some help there. We had to go to my cousin's and borrow a pump because of the church, and then we're serving at the church. So like I think by like day 3 or 4 when we were back, I was so fatigued from serving because, and this goes back to what you guys were talking about. I did not grow up in a house where service was a thing. It was just not our lifestyle. Like we were, and I'm not ashamed to say, I mean, I've repented for this, but we were a performance-based family. I mean, everything we did was for the stage, and that's just how we grew up. So it's like we were not behind-the-scenes kind of a people, and I don't think that's right. I mean, looking back, it's like it's not how it should have been. But it's just like it's just so ingrained in me that like if I'm serving for a long time, I just get real fatigued, and then I have that I feel that drawing of isolating and like backing up and like coming out of community. Because I don't want anybody to make me feel bad because I'm tired of serving. But, some of those are very, I think, feel like real human feelings to feel fatigued or to feel tired. And I think that's why David himself, a man after God's own heart, was like, I must command my soul to praise. And he's like, I'm just not feeling it right now, and Jerome has talked about that before. Mm-hmm. So I think some of that's real and normal, but it all goes back to like, well, what kind of culture do we want to be? Because when you feel yourself fatiguing out from the service, it's like, well, guess what? The only answer there is to lean in more. Because that's the only thing that's going to take your focus off of yourself again. Because that's what I found is I was just like, woe is me, like, but my yard's not done yet. It's just like,
but compassion fatigue is a very real thing too.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah.
But,
so it's like we've talked about, it's finding that balance.
Yeah.
Like, yes, there are times where we don't feel it and we just do it because it's a part of
out of obedience.
Yeah, out of obedience, and also just because it's a part of our routine.
Yeah.
And it's like the fake it until you make it kind of mentality. There's sometimes I don't feel it, but it comes later, and I'm not operating out of feelings. I'm operating out of obedience for God's call in my life.
Yeah.
But I do have to, like, these extroverts and like Enneagram 2s, people who like get their kicks out of serving and like being needed, you can burn yourself out, and then you're no good to anybody.
Yeah.
So if you're that kind of person, you do have to like keep your balance in check.
I heard someone say once, no is an anointed word too. And I was like, oh, that's so good. But then I think like I used it to my advantage and I was saying no all the time. Don't do that either. It's all about balance. But what I love about you guys, and I mean, I think everyone that meets you guys probably looks at you and goes, God, they're so real. They're just so real. Like you're so authentic and you say what you mean what you say. But like for you to just say, sometimes you got to fake it till you make it. Like I think that's so okay to say. And I think, a lot of people in the church and the collective don't or won't say that because it feels like, oh, you can't admit that. But it's like, no, sometimes you get tired, right? Like, and that's okay. But again, finding that balance between always saying yes or always saying no. Like, get it together.
Yeah. I had a youth pastor that once told me, fake it till you feel it. With doing the right thing. And so for a while I was like, oh, that means just like, I'm not going to make an attempt at like really internalizing doing the right thing. I'm just going to do it so I could check it off the list. And that way of interpreting it did not work out well. But it's more of what you're saying in the sense of, in the path of obedience, like, pursuing God through the boring, through reading scripture, through praising him and through praying to him and just spending intentional time with him on a day-to-day basis. Sometimes you're going to have to make those decisions where it's like, I don't feel like doing this, but I know this is the right thing to do.
Right.
And then, later on you could look back on it and, feel joy for what you've done. But
I mean, if we think about it, in full transparency, I think we can say here, sometimes you wake up and say, I don't feel like loving my spouse.
Mm-hmm.
They're annoying. Or
Jamie tells me that all the time.
He won't stop doing his Urkel impression. Oh my
I know,
goodness.
but
stop snoring.
I wake up and I choose to love my husband, even though I don't feel it. And I'm still going to like step into like my role as a wife and a helpmeet to him. And that the feeling of love comes later, or it comes back. You work through it. So.
It's another covenant.
Yes, absolutely.
It's part of it.
I heard somebody say once that like amateur writers write because they want to, and professional writers write because they have to. And they were interpreting that in the way of marriage. Like, do you want to be a professional spouse or do you want to be an amateur spouse? Which makes complete sense.
That's good. I thought it was because professional writers get paid, but
that too. But
okay.
I mean, maybe. No, I'm
paid
not
to
going
be a
down
wife,
that.
but
I've not gotten a paycheck for it.
All right,
not yet.
Yeah,
Not yet.
I had to go somewhere else to get a paycheck. So,
all right, we're gonna move into a segment that we we call missing child segment. It's not really funny, but 2%, the milk carton, the whole thing. Okay, so this segment, just first thing that comes to your mind. It's like one of those like where they ask you the first thing that pops in your head. You got to say it. What's missing from modern day worship?
I would say the spontaneous. And part of that might go back to like my early childhood years being like raised in a church, and that was very, like I said, charismatic. There was no order of service. So like when we sang at the beginning, it was just like, I want to sing page 232 on Heaven's Bright Shore or whatever. And we just like, cause there was no musicians, we just sang out of a book. And so, I kind of miss that like a little bit in the fact of like, hey, what, God's speaking to my heart right now. And this song is moving, has moved me, and I would just love to sing it, and that aspect. Another thing that I was thinking about is, on this Sunday we had the 7 and Ups in church, and it was so sweet. They were all like, so many of them were all sitting on the front row. Yeah. And the last song, my niece Baylor came back and and sang with me, and she was just singing her little heart out. It was so cute, and I kind of miss like just the kids in worship.
Yeah.
I'll tell you what, I really enjoy that, and having a point of view from being on stage during the music part of the worship. Obviously, we talked about my daughter Tabitha, how she's just giving it her all. Mm-hmm. I saw that in Baylor when she was up there. And it was so cool to see. Her eyes were closed, her hands were up, and she was just singing. I could tell she was singing at the top of her lungs.
That's awesome.
And it was just so great to see that.
So moving.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. All right. What do you think is missing?
Yeah, I mean, I was contemplating this week. I was like, this is a really tough question. And I don't know if this is like necessarily, a bad thing or a good thing, but I think you think of churches from the past, like even before this century, but like not that there's not a reverence, but like a reverence of Jesus's name, in really a long time ago, like people were revered his name so much that they couldn't even write his name down in fear of like, is this the right way to do it? Like, it's just like, and not to say we got to be, like all litigious about this, and they're just like, but like, just, and not just in church, in service or in worship in general, but in daily life, just like, just a reverence of Jesus' name. Mm-hmm. I so often just hear the name of Jesus just taken in vain. Yeah. And even sometimes, from people who are regular churchgoers. Not to say I haven't heard it in our church, but like I'm just saying, it's just just the reverence of the name of Jesus and who God is, and not to say that I'm perfect, but like it's just that's just something. I told you it was a tough question. Yeah. Like it was just, but that was if I'm being nitpicky, like I don't know.
And it's been interesting to hear the responses we've gotten so far on it. Let me ask you guys this, because we've talked a little bit about the future of the podcast and what future seasons could look like, and we're starting with people that are on the worship team, right? Like that have either been on stage or whatever, play, sing, whatever. But eventually we want those people sitting out there to come on and be on the podcast. We want to get to know you too. So, those invitations are coming. But like we, as a church, we're doing this to hear each other's stories and understand, like really know each other and like pull us closer together and really like, again, embody that. What does it look like to be a 24/7 worshiper? But one of the things we've talked about is that Andrew and I will never, ever know, and you guys can say this too, I think, is we will never know what it's like to not have a musical gifting and be sitting out there. Yeah. And so what does that mean? Does that mean that we interpret worship differently, or when we're out there sitting and we're not on stage, are we hearing different things? Are we thinking about it differently?
People's relationship to music, because
talk about the wiring.
Yeah.
Like, because we're gifted musically, does that change the connection here? Does it change the connection here? I don't know. I can't tell you. So I want to hear from folks who may not be musically, gifted or talented. No, we're not saying you can't sing or you can't play, but like, if you feel like, I've just never been called to that, it's not my thing. There are people that are like that, right? So like, it would just be so interesting to hear, what does that connection to the team feel like up there? And what does that connection feel like to God when you're hearing this music and maybe you don't feel comfortable singing at the top of your lungs. Maybe you're not comfortable doing this. Like,
that part interests me quite a bit. Is like once the music is playing, worship music is playing, and like we're setting an atmosphere of like, let's worship God. Let's like focus on nothing but praising Him through song, not just like a spoken word, but something about the power of music with that word. And so, we all have our personal connection to creating music or creating, being part of the worship mechanism, I guess. And so, but people's connection to God in that moment, I kind of hope it is different, but similar in the ways that it needs to be, because like they're connecting to the God of gods, right? And so, but I hope it's different, and so that like, because then it helps with that shared experience with the
Yes.
community when we have conversations like this.
Mm-hmm.
Like we can share from a more poetic
Yeah.
kind of approach of like one of God's attributes is beauty through poetry and beauty through nature, beauty through music. And they could say, well, like one of his attributes is beauty through like logic, beauty
Yeah.
through reason, beauty through
So
illogic.
and what
you
would
know?
that look like for you to say, well, I don't really have that connection through music, but I do have it through this, through that. Let's
Mhm.
incorporate it in our worship. Like
Yeah.
let's make it a part of us Sunday, so that thing that connects you to God, like we feel with music, we want to give that to you on Sundays. You know, like, and so I think that'll be an interesting part of when we start having folks on that are not necessarily on stage. I don't even know why I went there with you guys. I just feel like, you know, we all share that kind of like musical kind of gifting, kind of passion, and so it's funny because I don't think we'll ever know what it's like to connect with God without music. You know,
Mhm.
and what would that look like? So we want to know from you guys. So comments, put it in there. You know, what songs do you want to hear? You know, like are there songs that make you feel, oh, I do connect with that one because of the lyrics or because of it's just poetry or whatever the case might be. Put it in the comments. If you have ideas, throw it in there. And then, of course, we're going to come ask you to be on the podcast. So just know that.
Just no Ray Bolts.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I know Ray Bolts. I don't know. Carmen. Oh, talk about the 90s being a
Carmen.
weird time.
Well, we can talk
Oh.
about Point of Grace. We can maybe do some Point of
Put
Grace.
a link to Carmen.
Well-
And, oh my gosh, it'd be so good. All right, so we're gonna move. Speaking of music and speaking of beautiful music, we're gonna move into the segment where they're gonna share their gift. So we'll be right back.
I'm going to do some impressions.
No,
Yeah.
no, we're not doing that.
This is Michael Winslow.
No, we're
from-
gonna take a quick break and get set up, and then are you gonna sing?
We'll see.
Okay, we'll be surprised together. So we'll
Stay
be right.
tuned.
Yeah, we'll be right back.
Who am I that the highest king would welcome? I was lost, but he brought me in. Oh, his love for me. Oh, his love for me. Who the sun sets free, oh, is free indeed. I'm a child of God. Yes, I am. Free at last, he has ransomed me. His grace runs deep. While I was a slave to sin, Jesus died for me. Yes, he died for me. Who the Son sets free, oh, is free indeed. I'm a child of God. Yes, I am. In my Father's house, there's a place for me. I'm a child of God. Yes, I am. I am chosen, not forsaken. I am who you say I am. You are for me, not against me. I am who you say I am. I am chosen, not forsaken. I am who you say I am. You are for me, not against me. I am who you say I am. Oh, I am who you say I am. Who the Son sets free, oh, is free indeed. I'm a child of God. Yes, I am. my Father's house, there's a place for me. I'm a child of God. Yes, I am. In my Father's house, there's a place for me. I'm a child of God. Yes, I am. I am chosen, not forsaken. I am who you say I am. You are for me, not against me. I am who you say I am. I am chosen, not forsaken. I am who you say I am. You are for me, not against me. I am who you say I am. Yes, I am who you say I am. God, I am who you say I am. Who the sun sets free, was free indeed. I'm a child of God. Yes, I am. In my Father's house, there's a place for me. I'm a child of God. Yes, I am. In my Father's house, there's a place for me. I'm a child of God. Yes, I am.
All right, so I was standing back behind the camera, as was Emily, my daughter, and Andrew's back there as we're listening to that. And it was like taking everything inside of me not to sing along. So that was really difficult. It was beautiful. That was very beautiful. So obviously, you guys already know Kevin. Like, he does that every week, right? Beautiful, obviously, like totally gifted. And called by God. And so this is why they're here, to share their story, to share their gifts, of which they have like a billion. It's just not fair. But thank you to you guys too for watching the 2% and listening to the 2% podcast. Obviously, like, subscribe. And if you have any requests, like seriously, like songs you want to hear, songs you want to worship, to, like things that make you feel that connection with God, whether it's through the music or the lyrics or whatever it might be, put them in the comments. We will definitely tell Petey, and Petey, you're going to have to put them in the rotation. So thanks for watching. Thanks for listening. Bye, guys.
With real life stories on display, gifts and talents in every way, building up a community. Have you had your 2% today?
What's up, 2% fam? My name is Emily Leatherman. Make sure you like and subscribe.